Hi, I'm Rachel Vandermeer. I'm from Woodstock, Ontario, and I'm a second-year student here at St. Therese. And I will be reflecting on this Sunday's Gospel, which is Mark 13, verse 33 to 37. So the Gospel this Sunday is the necessity for watchfulness, which is a parable told by Jesus about a master who leaves his servants in charge to wait for his return and to keep awake. So this is actually the last passage in the Gospel of Mark before the Passion of Christ begins. So these are some of the last words that Jesus tells his disciples. As well, the whole chapter up to this point has just been a series of Jesus telling his disciples about the future. Clearly, he wants them to be prepared for something. And this being the first Sunday of Advent, that makes sense. So, to start off, it's very interesting to note some of the specific words that Jesus uses in this passage. You do not know when the master of the house will come, in the evening, or at midnight, or at cockcrow, or at dawn. So those four specific times are actually going to be mentioned again very soon in the Gospel of Mark, in the Passion. As well, there's one more connection, one similar phrase that connects them both, and it is keep awake. Jesus says keep awake both in this passage and in the Garden of Gethsemane. So knowing how important the Passion is, we can see that what Jesus is saying in this passage is also important because he's using those same phrases. So returning to the idea of keep awake, it might be helpful to understand what it means to be spiritually asleep. So looking up the definition for spiritually asleep, it is to be spiritually torpor or self-indulgent. Torpor is to be inactive, lethargic, numb, sluggish, or to lack interest. When I looked up the definition of torpor, the image that popped up was, interestingly enough, hibernating animals. So, hibernating animals spend most of their life sleeping, coming awake only during the spring times and summers. So the question naturally follows, when you're spiritually asleep, are you only awake during the spiritual highs, during the retreats, during the consolations, those spring times of your faith? And do you sleep through the rest, maybe the harder times, or the times that just aren't as interesting? Or can we truly be awake the whole year, waiting for Jesus and not be asleep? Another definition of sleep is a more ancient one. So in the ancient mind, sleep was understood as a separation of the body and the soul. The soul was extremely active in the dreams. It could be flying, jumping, doing whatever it wanted to do, but the body was not affected by what the soul was doing. The body was simply sleeping. So, to be spiritually asleep is to have a disconnect between your spiritual life, your soul, and what you're doing in your daily life, which can be represented by your body. The example that comes to mind is prayer time only Christians. We can pray all the time, and we can get all these spiritual ideas and all these great aspirations, but if we don't actually make them part of our daily life, are we just being disconnected, spiritually asleep? Our actions have to be a reflection of what's going on in our spiritual life. The final reflection I want to offer is that a similar story to this is found in both the Gospels of Matthew and Luke. The only difference, though, is the ending. In both Matthew and Luke, the slave is beaten for his neglect or spiritual slumber. But in Mark, there's actually no mention of punishment. Now, this is personal reflection, but I believe that this can teach us something very important. God does not want us to be awake just because we fear punishment. Perhaps God wants us to be awake and alert out of love and desire for him. The more you love something, the more you think about it. The more you think about something, the more you are prepared to receive it. I believe this can be true for heaven as well. So my challenge to you is to fall in love with God and desire heaven more and be satisfied less and less with the consolations of earth. One possible way that you can do this is every night before you fall asleep, take a moment to reflect on heaven, on specifically one aspect of heaven that you look forward to. For example, one night I reflected on the reality that heaven will be a place of pure joy and peace. There won't be any stress. After you reflect on that one aspect of heaven, then see if you can integrate heaven more fully into earth the next day. So for my example, I decided that when stresses came up the next day, I would try to surrender them to God more quickly, making heaven more of a reality on earth by not letting my peace and my joy be disturbed. I think little things like this can be a great way to desire heaven more and to think about it more. Make it more of our goal. Take the time to fall in love with God and grow in your desire to be in heaven. He has prepared it for us, and I believe that we can be in a state of preparedness and awakeness the more we desire it.